Stop being dramatic. Your sister's engagement party has 60 guests waiting. That's what my mother said to me over the phone, while I was bleeding alone in an emergency room at 11 p.m. That was the last time I spoke to either of my parents. My name is Erica Lewis. I'm 34 years old. 8 years ago, I lost my baby that night, and I lost my family too. Not because of the miscarriage, but because of a choice they made. A choice I still hear in my head sometimes, in the quiet moments, when everything else fades. What I didn't know back then was that someone in my family never truly left me for 8 years. He was there, in the back row of every ceremony, behind every anonymous payment, inside every envelope I thought came from some random financial aid program. I just didn't know it was him. Not until last Christmas Eve, when a little girl, maybe 6 years old, showed up at my door holding a worn-out photo album like it was the most important thing in the world. Before we continue, take a moment to subscribe, but only if you believe you deserve to be valued and never treated as invisible. I'd really love to know, where are you listening from right now? And what's the temperature there? Also, just a quick note, this is a fictional story, with some elements enhanced using artificial intelligence to make it more vivid and emotionally engaging. Now, let me take you back. Winter, 2017. The night everything broke. But before the hospital, before the silence, before I disappeared, you need to understand what my life looked like. I was 26, working night shifts at a county hospital just outside of Portland. I had just finished my nursing program, top of my class. 3 job offers waiting for me. The day I got my nursing pin, I called my mom. She picked up on the 4th ring. Mom, I did it. I graduated. There was a pause. Then she said, "Oh, that's nice. Sweetheart. Hey, can you switch your shift this Saturday? Your sister, Vanessa, needs a ride to her final dress fitting, and I already have plans." I stared at the wall for a second. Yeah, sure. I'll figure something out. That was the pattern. It was always the pattern. My sister Vanessa was 4 years older than me, and in my mother's world, she was everything. Carol Lewis. My mom posted about Vanessa like she was running a campaign. Vanessa's engagement, Vanessa's new apartment, Vanessa's hair appointments. Every caption said the same thing. My greatest pride. I don't think I was ever on her page. Not once. My father, Daniel, was quiet, an accountant. He came home at 5:30 every day, ate dinner at exactly 6, then disappeared into the garage to listen to baseball games on an old radio. When my mom talked over me at the dinner table, he would look at me, just look, from across the table, like he was trying to say sorry without actually saying it, but he never spoke. Not once. For a long time. I told myself that being quiet meant being strong, that if I just worked harder, stayed patient, kept proving myself, eventually, they would see me. I was wrong. That fall, everything changed. I found out I was pregnant at 10 weeks. I was sitting on the bathroom floor at 2 in the morning, still in my scrubs, staring at a plastic test resting on my knee, like it might suddenly give me a different answer if I waited long enough. It didn't. The father. His name doesn't matter. Not for this story. He had already left 3 weeks earlier. Packed a bag while I was working a double shift, sent me a single text that said sorry, and blocked my number before I even had the chance to respond. No explanation, no conversation, just gone. So there I was, 26, alone, pregnant, and I made a decision. I was keeping the baby. Not because I thought it would be easy. I knew it wouldn't be. But I also knew something else. I knew how to survive hard things. I had been doing that my entire life. The first person I called was my mother. Mom, I need to tell you something. I'm pregnant. There was silence. Not the kind that feels warm or shocked or even concerned. The kind that feels calculated. Then she spoke. Are you sure this is a good time? Vanessa's wedding is in 3 months, and I really don't want anything overshadowing it. I pulled the phone away from my ear for a second and stared up at the ceiling like maybe I misheard her. I understand, I said quietly. She didn't ask how far along I was. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't ask who the father was, or if I needed help, or if I was scared. She asked about the wedding. Then she hung up. The only person who called me back that week was my aunt, Margaret, my dad's younger sister. She lived about 2 towns over in a small, quiet neighborhood where nothing ever seemed urgent. She wasn't loud. She wasn't dramatic. She just said, Erica, sweetheart, congratulations. I mean that. You're going to be an incredible mother. I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that until I hung up and started crying. I cried for 20 minutes straight, sitting on the edge of my bed, holding my phone like it was the only thing keeping me grounded. Looking back, I should have understood what that meant. Who showed up, and who didn't. The signs were there, all of them, but I kept hoping. I kept waiting for my mom to call me back and say something different, something softer, something real. She never did. At 14 weeks, everything fell apart. I had just gotten home after a 10-hour shift. I remember standing in my kitchen, heating up a can of soup, the kind you eat when you're too tired to care what it tastes like. And then it hit me. A sharp, sudden pain low in my abdomen, so intense it folded me over the counter like someone had knocked the air out of me. I grabbed my keys without thinking, drove myself to the emergency room. By the time I stumbled through the sliding doors, there was blood soaking through my scrubs. Everything moved fast after that. Voices, hands, bright lights, a doctor explaining something in a calm, controlled tone that didn't match the urgency in his eyes. Ruptured ectopic pregnancy. We need to operate immediately. Then he asked the question that always comes next. Is there someone we can call? So I called my mother. It was 11 p.m. on a Saturday night. I could hear music in the background. Laughter, glasses clinking. Mom, I'm in the ER. They're taking me into surgery. I'm scared. Can you come? She sighed. Not a pause. Not shock. A sigh. Erica, I can't just leave. There are dozens of people here. You'll be fine. The doctors know what they're doing. Don't be dramatic. And then I heard it. Vanessa's voice in the background. Sharp. Irritated. Who is it? Tell her we're busy. My mother lowered her voice after that, like she was protecting the room from me, like I was the inconvenience. I'll call you tomorrow. Okay, just get some rest. And then she hung up. If you believe my mother was right to walk away while I was in the hospital, then comment support. But if you think no one should be abandoned in their most vulnerable moment, then comment oppose. I'm really curious to see where you stand, because sometimes one choice can reveal everything about what we value most. I went into surgery alone. There was a nurse. I still remember her name. Melissa. I had never met her before that night. She held my hand as they wheeled me into the operating room, her grip steady, warm. You're not alone. Sweetheart, I'm right here, she said softly. A stranger said the words my own mother couldn't. That was the last thing I heard before everything went dark. When I woke up, the first thing I noticed was the silence. Not the peaceful kind, the hollow kind. The baby was gone, and the room was empty. No flowers, no family, no one sitting in the chair by the window. Not that night, not the next day, not ever. 3 days later, I was still in the hospital when my phone rang. It was my mother, Carol. She didn't ask how the surgery went. She didn't ask if I was in pain. She didn't ask if I was okay. The first thing she said was, "I hope you're not going to use this to make anyone feel guilty." The party went beautifully. By the way, I held the phone to my ear and just listened. Let the words sink in. "Erica, are you there?" "I'm here," I said. And that was the last thing I said to my mother for 8 years. I hung up. That same afternoon, I changed my number. The hospital assigned me a social worker. She helped me close everything down. I deactivated my social media, filed transfer paperwork, requested a position at a small community clinic 4 hours south, in a town where no one knew my last name. Within 2 weeks, I was gone. Completely. My mother called my old number. Nothing. She called my Aunt Margaret and screamed, "Your niece is being selfish. She's punishing me over one phone call." One phone call. That's how she told the story. One phone call. While her daughter was bleeding on a hospital bed. While I lost a child. While I woke up to a ceiling I didn't recognize. And a silence so deep, it felt like it was swallowing me whole. I didn't leave to punish anyone. I need you to understand that. I left because staying would have destroyed me. Not my body, but everything inside me that still believed I mattered to them, because if I stayed, I would have spent the rest of my life reaching for people who were never going to reach back. So I stopped reaching. And that should have been the end of it. It should have ended right there. Except, someone in my family didn't accept that ending. 2 years after I disappeared. A letter arrived. Not a text. Not an email. A real letter. Handwritten. On pale lavender stationery. From my Aunt Margaret. She found my address through someone I used to work with at the hospital. When I saw the envelope, I almost didn't open it. I was done with that part of my life. Done with the Lewis family and everything attached to it. But this was Aunt Margaret. She was the only one who had called me, the only one who had said congratulations when no one else did. So I opened it. The first part of the letter was exactly what I expected from her. Warm, gentle. She said she hoped I was doing well, that she missed me, that she was proud of me. I felt my shoulders relax just a little as I read it. Then I reached the second paragraph, and my hands started shaking. "Your mother has been telling people you left because of a mental health crisis." I stopped breathing for a second. She wrote a letter to Pastor Michael at Riverside Community Church. She told him you were diagnosed with a severe personality disorder, that you were a danger to yourself, that you disappeared in the middle of the night without explanation. I read it again, then again, just to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding. My mother didn't just let me go. She rewrote me. She took my survival and turned it into her tragedy. Aunt Margaret wrote that my mother now hosted monthly family dinners, invited everyone, aunts, uncles, cousins, and before each meal, she would ask everyone to bow their heads and pray for me. A full minute. For the daughter who was supposedly broken, the daughter who needed saving, the daughter who, in reality, had simply walked away after being abandoned in a hospital. Everyone believes her. Margaret wrote, "She's very convincing." At the very bottom of the letter, there was one more line, small, almost easy to miss. "Your father asked me to keep the original letter your mother sent to Pastor Michael. Just in case." I didn't understand what that meant. Not yet. But I kept reading. Because life doesn't pause just because your heart is still catching up. That's the part nobody tells you. When you cut off your family, the world keeps moving. Your alarm still goes off at 5 a.m. Your patients still need you. Bills still arrive on time. The rent doesn't care that you cried in the shower for 40 minutes the night before. So I worked. I studied. I applied to a nurse practitioner program at the state university, and I got in on my first try. For 2.5 years, I worked full-time and went to school full-time. I drank more coffee than water. I slept in the break room between shifts. I didn't tell anyone about my family because there was nothing to tell. They didn't exist in my new life. The day I graduated, Master of Science in Nursing, Nurse Practitioner Certification, I walked across that stage with a smile I had practiced in the mirror. I told myself I was proud, and I was. But when I looked out into the crowd, rows and rows of families, mothers crying, fathers holding flowers, people cheering, waving their phones, capturing the moment, my row was empty. I told myself it didn't matter, that I did this for me, not for anyone else. And that was true. But it was also true that I searched, from the front row, all the way to the back, hoping, just once, to see a face I recognized. I didn't find one. I smiled, shook the dean's hand, and told myself quietly, "This is enough." And for a while, it was. I got a job at a community health clinic in a small town outside Salem. Most of my patients didn't have insurance. I ran the women's health program, saw everything from routine checkups to emergencies that shouldn't have been emergencies if people had better access to care. My coworkers became my people. Not family, but something close. I bought a small apartment. Nothing fancy. Secondhand furniture. A plant on the windowsill that I somehow kept alive. And a cat I named Olive who acted like she owned the place. Every Christmas, I signed up for the overnight shift. 12 hours. It was easier that way. Easier than sitting alone in my apartment. Hearing laughter through the walls. Imagining tables filled with people who chose each other. I built a life I was proud of. I really did. But there are nights, especially in December, when the silence feels heavier than anything. What I didn't know was that on the day I graduated, someone had been there, sitting in the very last row. I just didn't see them, and I wouldn't find out for another 6 years. Last Christmas Eve, I was 34, still living in that same small town where the main street had a bakery, a hardware store, and a church bell that rang every hour like clockwork. My apartment sat on the second floor of an old Victorian building. The stairs creaked, the windows let in cold air. But the morning light, it was beautiful. That night, I had just finished a 10-hour shift at the clinic. Flu season. Every room was full. I got home, kicked off my shoes, took off my coat, and poured myself a glass of wine I had been thinking about since noon. My Christmas tree was small, 3 feet tall, sitting on the table, pre-lit. I had hung exactly 7 ornaments on it. Olive was curled up underneath, asleep like she had no responsibilities in the world. Outside, snow was falling, soft, the kind that makes everything quieter. My phone buzzed. Aunt Margaret, Merry Christmas. Sweetheart, I need to tell you something, but it has to be in person. Can I come by tonight? I stared at the message for a long moment. Margaret had always respected my space. She sent birthday cards, occasional letters. We talked on the phone every few months. Short, easy conversations. She never pushed, never mentioned my parents unless I brought them up. For her to ask to come over on Christmas Eve, something was different. Of course. I texted back. Come whenever you're ready. I put the kettle on, straightened the couch cushions, adjusted the blanket on the chair like it mattered, tried to ignore the tight feeling building in my chest. At exactly 7 p.m., the doorbell rang. I walked over, reached for the handle, and opened the door. But it wasn't Margaret standing there. I looked down and saw a pair of brown eyes staring up at me, A little girl, maybe 5 or 6. Dark blonde hair tangled from the wind, cheeks flushed from the cold, holding a book tightly against her chest like she was afraid someone might take it away. She looked up at me. Snow clung to her eyelashes. "Are you Aunt Erica?" I couldn't move. For a second. I couldn't even breathe. No one had called me aunt in 8 years. No one in my family had called me anything at all. She shifted slightly, her voice softer this time. "Are you Aunt Erica?" Yes, I'm Erica. The words felt unfamiliar in my own mouth. The little girl stepped forward and held out the book. "Grandpa told me to give this to you. He said you'd understand." My hands took it before my mind could catch up. It was heavier than it looked, leather-bound, worn. The spine cracked from use, held together with a simple rubber band. On the front cover, written in uneven, shaky handwriting. I recognized it instantly. My father's. 3 words. For Erica. Everything. My chest tightened. Behind her. I heard a car door close. I looked up. Aunt Margaret was stepping out, pulling her coat tighter around her. Her face flushed red from the cold. Or from crying. Maybe both. She walked toward us slowly, like every step carried weight. She looked older. Not just older. Tired. "This is Lily," she said softly as she reached the steps. "Vanessa's daughter. Your niece." The air left my lungs. My niece. "And before you say anything," Margaret continued, her voice trembling slightly, "your father made that." She nodded toward the album in my hands. All of it. Every page. She paused, pressing her hand briefly against her mouth, steadying herself. "He asked me to bring her tonight because..." Her voice broke. I felt something shift inside me before she even finished. "He's not doing well. Erica. He's in the hospital. It's his heart." I looked down at the little girl standing in front of me. Lily. She had Vanessa's features, the shape of her chin, the small ears. But her smile, hesitant, slightly crooked, like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to smile yet. That smile, it was my father's, standing there on my doorstep, on Christmas Eve. "Come inside," I said quietly, "both of you." We stepped into the apartment, the warmth hitting us as the door closed behind us. Lily sat carefully on the edge of the couch, still holding her hands together like she didn't want to touch anything without permission. Margaret stayed near the door for a moment, watching me. I didn't say anything. I just sat down on the floor, the album resting on my lap. And I opened it. The first photo was slightly blurry, taken from far away. A graduation stage, navy and gold banners. A woman in a cap and gown shaking hands with someone at the podium. Me. My nurse practitioner graduation, 2 years ago. I leaned closer. The angle, the distance. It was taken from the very back of the auditorium, the last row. I could see the curve of empty seats surrounding whoever had taken it. My father had been there. I turned the page. Another photo. Me outside the clinic, laughing with one of my coworkers, holding a cup of coffee, taken from across the street, through a car window. There was a faint reflection in the corner of the image, a shape, a person who didn't want to be seen. Another page, a bank transfer receipt, $200, sent every month, 48 months in total. The sender's name was Margaret Lewis, but in the corner, written lightly in pencil, in the same handwriting as the cover. From Dad. My throat closed. Those payments. I had received them through a financial aid office. I thought they were part of some rural healthcare loan assistance program. I had even written a thank you letter to the administrator, explaining how much it meant to me. Every single dollar came from him. That money, Every single dollar came from my father. I turned the page. 5 Christmas cards, one for each year, handwritten, unsigned, never mailed. Every single one began the same way. Dear Erica, I'm sorry I'm not brave enough to send this. My vision blurred. I kept going. The last photo in that section stopped me completely. It was me, standing outside the mobile clinic van, giving a flu shot to an elderly patient. I remembered that day. It had been freezing. My hands were numb even through my gloves. But what I hadn't seen, what I hadn't known, was in the background. Far away, barely visible. A man standing near a parked truck. Winter coat. Hands in his pockets. Watching. My father. I closed the album, pressed my hand over my mouth, and I broke. Not quietly. Not gracefully. I folded in on myself right there on the floor. Across from me. Aunt Margaret sat down slowly, not saying anything. Lily had fallen asleep on the couch, curled up around a pillow like she belonged there, like she had always belonged there. Why? I whispered. My voice didn't sound like mine anymore. Why didn't he just call me Margaret? Looked down at her hands for a long moment before answering. Your mother controls everything, she said softly. The accounts, the car, the house. Everything is in her name or tied to her. I shook my head slightly, trying to process it. He could have called. I said. He could have. She admitted, but she checks his phone every night. Every message. Every call. I stared at her. He could have left. Margaret's voice dropped even lower. She told him that if he contacted you, she would make sure Vanessa cut him off from Lily. I turned my head slowly toward the couch. The small figure sleeping there. My niece. He lives for that child. Erica. Margaret continued. She's the only part of his life that still feels like light. I wiped my face with the sleeve of my sweater, trying to steady my breathing. So he chose silence. Margaret leaned forward slightly. He chose the only way he knew how to fight back. She gestured gently toward the album. Every photo. Taken on days he told your mother he was going to the hardware store. Every dollar. Sent through my account so it wouldn't appear on theirs. Every card. Written at my kitchen table at 6 a.m. before your mother woke up. I looked again at Lily. At the quiet rise and fall of her breathing. A child who shared my blood. Who existed in the world. And I hadn't even known her name until 10 minutes ago. Does my mother know where I live? I asked. Margaret hesitated. I mentioned your town once. About 2 years ago. By accident. I waited. She said. Margaret stopped. Tell me. I said. Margaret exhaled slowly. She said. Good. Let her stay in that little town. At least she's not here embarrassing us. The words hit. Exactly where they were meant to. But they didn't break me. Not anymore. 8 years had done something to me. Built something inside me that my mother no longer had access to. Margaret, I said quietly, is there anything else in this album? She met my eyes for a second, then nodded, and turned to the last page. Before I show you what was on that page, I want to ask you something. If you've ever felt invisible to the people who were supposed to love you the most, if you've ever been rewritten into someone you're not, tell me in the comments, or tell me what you would do in my place. Because what I saw next changed everything. I turned the page. It wasn't a photo. It was a copy. Grainy. Slightly faded, like it had been scanned from an original document. At the top, printed clearly, Riverside Community Church, dated 6 years ago. And before I even finished the first line, I knew exactly who had written it. No one else spoke like that. The words were polished, carefully chosen, the kind of sentences designed to sound concerned, while quietly destroying someone. Dear Pastor Michael, I am writing to you with a heavy heart regarding my youngest daughter, Erica. As you may know, she left our family suddenly and without explanation. What I have not shared publicly is that Erica has been diagnosed with a severe personality disorder. She has become a danger to herself and has refused all treatment. We are devastated. I read it once, then again, then a third time. Not because I didn't understand it, but because some part of me needed to make sure it was real. None of it was true. Not a single word. I had never been diagnosed with anything. I had never refused treatment. I left because my mother told me to stop being dramatic while I was losing my baby. And she put it in writing, sent it to a pastor, let it spread through a church full of people who knew my name, people who probably whispered about me, prayed for me, pictured me as someone broken. How did Dad get this? I asked. My voice sounded distant, flat. Pastor Michael gave him a copy. Margaret said quietly. He kept the original in his office. I looked up at her. He said it didn't sit right. A mother writes something like that, but never once asks the church to check on her daughter, never asks for help, never asks anyone to reach out. She shook her head slightly. It didn't add up. I stared down at the paper again. Why didn't Dad use it sooner? Margaret's eyes flicked briefly toward Lily, still asleep on the couch. Then back to me. He was afraid, she said, afraid of losing everything. She hesitated before continuing. But 2 months ago, they found a blockage in his heart. My chest tightened. He's scheduled for surgery on the 26th. Her voice softened, and he told me, if something happens, at least let Erica know she was never forgotten. The room felt smaller suddenly, like the air had shifted. Then Margaret said something that changed everything. Your mother organized the Christmas Eve service at Riverside Church this year. I looked up. She's giving a speech tonight, Margaret said carefully. About forgiveness. About the pain of losing a child who chose to walk away. For a second, I almost laughed. Almost. But the sound that came out wasn't laughter. It was something colder. Something sharper. She's performing, I said, on Christmas Eve. Margaret didn't argue. She's been rehearsing all week. The whole congregation will be there. 60, maybe 70 people. The same people who read that letter. The same people who bowed their heads every month and prayed for me like I was a warning. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside. The snow was falling heavier now. The streetlight cast a soft yellow glow across the sidewalk, somewhere down the street. I could hear faint voices singing carols. I looked back into the room, at Lily, at the album lying open on the floor, at the page with the letters my father had written and never sent, at the photo of him, standing outside my clinic in the snow, watching me from a distance like he didn't belong in my world anymore. I'm not going there to fight her, I said quietly. Margaret nodded. No one is asking you to fight. Then what are you asking? She walked over and placed her hand gently on my shoulder. Careful, like I might break. If you don't go. Her version of the story is the only one that survives. I didn't say anything. And your father, lying in that hospital bed, he'll know he spent 8 years building all of this. She glanced at the album. For nothing. I looked down at it again, then at my phone. Then, I did something I hadn't done in 8 years. The phone rang twice before he answered. Riverside Community Church. This is Pastor Michael. Pastor Michael, this is Erica Lewis. There was a pause. Not awkward. Not confused. It felt like the kind of pause from someone who had been waiting, but didn't know if the call would ever come. Erica, he said gently, I've been hoping to hear from you. I swallowed. You have. I've been waiting for this call for 6 years. I leaned my forehead against the cold window. I kept the letter your mother sent. He continued. Because it didn't feel right. A mother writes something like that, but never asks us to check on her daughter. No doctor, no hospital, no help. Just a story. She wanted people to believe her version. My chest tightened. Not from pain, from something else. Something that felt like being seen for the first time in years. I'm not asking you to take sides. I said. I'm not. He replied calmly. I'm standing with the truth. I took a breath. Can I come tonight? You're always welcome here. Erica, you always have been. I ended the call and stood there in silence. I didn't make a plan. I didn't rehearse anything. I wasn't going there to create a scene. I wasn't going to humiliate her. I was going because for 8 years, she had stood in front of people and told them I was broken. And tonight, I would walk in whole. That would be enough. Margaret took Lily home. She didn't want the child there for what might happen. And I agreed. I went alone. I grabbed my coat. The same one I had worn to work that morning. It still smelled faintly like antiseptic and coffee. I didn't change. I didn't try to look different. I looked exactly like what I was. A woman coming straight from work. The church parking lot was already full when I arrived. I sat in my car for a moment, watching people walk inside. Families in warm sweaters, children holding candles, couples walking close together. Normal lives, normal people. Completely unaware that the woman who organized this night had spent years lying about her own daughter. I stepped out. The cold air hit sharp against my skin. Inside, the church was warm and glowing with candlelight. A small orchestra played softly near the front. "O Holy Night" filled the room. Every seat was taken. I slipped into the last row, the very back pew, the same place my father had once sat at my graduation. I lowered my head slightly and folded my hands, trying to steady my breathing. Then I looked up. She was there. Front row. My mother, Carol Lewis. Perfect hair. Perfect posture. A red blouse that stood out against the soft lights. She was smiling, laughing, touching people's arms like she always did when she wanted to be admired. Next to her sat Vanessa, stiff and focused on her phone. Beside her, a man I didn't know. Her husband, Ethan. Still, quiet, distant. Then Vanessa looked up. Her eyes met mine, and everything changed. The color drained from her face. She grabbed Ethan's arm and whispered quickly. He didn't react. She tried again. More urgently. He still didn't turn. The music faded. The room fell quiet. Pastor Michael stepped to the podium. "Before we continue," he said, "I'd like to invite Carol Lewis to share a few words." Applause filled the room. Warm, trusting, sincere. I sat in the last row and waited. The applause felt warm, genuine, the kind of applause people give when they trust someone completely. These were people who had sat at my mother's table, brought her food, listened to her stories, and believed every word. She stood, smoothed her blouse, and walked to the podium with calm, practiced confidence. "Thank you, Pastor," she said softly. That smile appeared, the one that looked fragile enough to be real, but never was. Christmas is about family, about forgiveness, about never giving up on the people you love. She paused, letting the room settle. My youngest daughter has been away for many years. Her voice cracked at just the right moment. Not a day goes by that I don't pray for her to come home. I left the door open. I never stopped reaching out. Her hand pressed against her chest. But sometimes, the people we love choose to walk away. And all we can do is wait. Someone in the crowd wiped their eyes. Another person nodded. A quiet voice said, "We're praying for you, Carol." I sat in the last row and listened to her describe a life that never happened. A version of reality where she cared, where she tried, where she didn't hang up while her daughter was bleeding. My fingers tightened around my bag. In the front row, Vanessa stared down at the floor, completely still. My mother finished to applause. She dabbed her eyes with a neatly folded tissue she had prepared in advance. Even her tears were planned. As she stepped down, people reached out to touch her, offering sympathy. She accepted it all like it belonged to her. Then she turned and saw me. Her smile froze instantly, not faded, not shifted, frozen. For 3 seconds. Her real face showed, the one without the performance. Then it disappeared. "Oh my God," she said loudly. "Erica, is that you?" She walked toward me quickly, arms opening wide, tears already forming. "My baby, you came home on Christmas Eve." Gasps filled the room. A few people even clapped. She moved like she had rehearsed this moment for years. I stood up. I didn't move toward her. I didn't move away. "Hello, Mom." She reached me and pulled me into a tight hug. I didn't respond. My arms stayed at my sides. She leaned close to my ear, her voice dropping instantly. "Don't you dare make a scene. Smile." The warmth vanished. The command remained. The same voice she had always used. But this time, I didn't obey. I stepped back, just enough to break her hold. "I didn't come here for a reunion, Mom." My voice was calm, steady, controlled. Her eyes flickered for a moment. She glanced around the room, quickly adjusting. Then the smile came back. "Erica, sweetheart, we can talk at home. Not here. You chose here to tell your story," I said quietly. "I think here is fair." The room shifted. Small movements, quiet murmurs. People started paying attention. My mother turned slightly toward Vanessa, her expression tightening for just a second. The performance was starting to crack. My mother shot Vanessa a quick look. No words. Just a command. "Handle this." Vanessa stood immediately and walked toward us. Posture straight. Expression controlled. "Erica, this isn't the time or place," she said. "Mom has been devastated." I looked at her calmly. "Has she?" I asked. "Or has she been rehearsing?" Vanessa froze for a second. Her lips parted, then pressed together again. Around us. The room shifted. Murmurs spread. People who had been reaching for hymn books were now watching us instead. My mother stepped forward, lifting her chin slightly. Her voice rose just enough to reach everyone. "This is exactly what I was talking about," she said. Turning to the room, "She comes here, on Christmas Eve, to attack me in God's house." She opened her arms, playing the part perfectly. "You all saw," she added. Some people nodded, but not all. Some were watching me now, waiting. I reached into my bag. "Before I go on, let me ask you something. If you were in my place, would you walk away and let her version of the story stand forever? Or would you stay and let the truth speak?" I pulled out the album slowly. I didn't raise it or make a scene. I just held it. "I didn't come here to attack you, Mom," I said evenly. "I came because Dad asked me to." Her expression flickered. "Your father," she said quickly. "What are you talking about?" "Did you know he was at my graduation?" I asked. I opened the album and turned it slightly so the nearest people could see. Back row. Right where I'm standing now. The room grew quieter. "Did you know he sent me money every month so I could finish school?" I turned another page. Did you know he wrote me a Christmas card every year and never sent them? Because he was afraid of you. Silence spread. Not peaceful. Heavy. That's ridiculous, my mother said, her voice tightening. Your father agrees with me. He always has. Dad is in the hospital, I said. That landed. Heart surgery. On the 26th. I closed the album gently. He made this. Every photo. Every receipt. Every letter. Because he didn't know if he'd get another chance to tell me the truth. A ripple moved through the crowd. The same woman who had been crying earlier was now staring at my mother differently. No one was clapping anymore. I turned to the last page and held it up. This is a letter you wrote, I said, 6 years ago. To Pastor Michael. My mother went pale. Completely pale. I read it aloud. Calm, clear, steady. You told him I was diagnosed with a severe personality disorder, that I was a danger to myself, that I disappeared without explanation. I lowered the paper. None of that is true. My voice stayed even. I left because you told me to stop being dramatic, while I was losing my baby in an emergency room. A soft gasp moved through the room, then another. Pastor Michael stepped forward. I can confirm that letter, he said. I kept the original because something about it didn't feel right. My mother turned sharply toward him. How dare you? I'm not taking sides, he said calmly. I'm confirming a fact. Vanessa stepped forward quickly. Erica, you're twisting this, she said. Mom was trying to protect the family. Then another voice cut in. Vanessa, sit down. Everyone turned. Ethan stood up, tall, still, unmoving. I've known something for 2 years, he said. Vanessa's face changed instantly. Ethan, don't. He ignored her and looked at me. She told me, during an argument, that she heard your call that night. The room went completely silent. From the hospital. He swallowed. And she told your mother not to go. Vanessa grabbed his arm. Stop, she said. Don't go. The guests are about to arrive. The silence after that was absolute. I have a daughter. Ethan continued. Lily. She's 6. And I need to decide what kind of example I'm setting for her. My mother stepped forward, her voice breaking now. This is slander. You're all attacking me, Mom, I said quietly. Not loud, not angry, just clear. I didn't come here to attack you. I let the silence settle. I came here because for 8 years, you told everyone I was broken. I took a breath, and I'm standing here, so they can see that I'm not. No one spoke. Not my mother, not Vanessa, not anyone. And then my mother did exactly what I should have expected. She didn't apologize. She didn't admit anything. She looked at the room and said coldly, So you're all going to believe her? And after everything that happened, not everyone believed me. Some still stood by my mother. Habit is powerful. People don't let go of a story they've believed for years in a single night. But something had shifted. Enough people began asking the same question. Is it true? Did she really write that letter? And the answer never changed. Yes. And the proof still existed. That alone was enough to crack the version of reality she had built. On New Year's Day, Ethan texted me, short, direct. Give her time, but I want Lily to know her aunt. I read it twice before replying. I'd like that. Meanwhile, my mother remained in the house on Maple Street. No one forced her out. They didn't need to. The doors were open. The rooms were just empty. No voices, no movement, no audience. The silence she had once used against me now surrounded her instead. 2 days later, I sat in a hospital waiting room at 6:30 a.m. A cup of coffee rested in my hands, untouched. Margaret sat beside me, knitting, the soft clicking of the needles filling the space between us. She always kept her hands busy when she was afraid. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one telling families to stay calm. I was the one waiting. The hours dragged. Hour 1. Margaret knitted. Hour 2. I paced. Hour 3. I sat and stared at the floor, thinking about all the years that had passed, all the moments I had missed, all the silence I had accepted as final. And then, finally, the doors opened. The surgeon stepped out. The surgery went well. He said, "He's strong." The tension in my chest released all at once. Margaret laughed, grabbing my arm, and I cried. But this time, I didn't cry alone. When my father woke up, I was there, sitting in the chair by the window, the same chair that had been empty for me years ago. He looked at me, eyes still heavy but clear. "You're still here," he said. "I'm still here, Dad." That was enough. We didn't need more words in that moment. A week later, I went to Margaret's house. Lily was sitting at the kitchen table, coloring. She looked up when I walked in, her whole face softening with recognition. "Hi, Aunt Erica," like it had always been that way. I sat across from her and watched her draw, completely focused, completely present. After a few minutes, she folded the paper and slid it toward me. 2 figures, holding hands. "That's us," she said. I smiled. "Did Grandpa tell you about me?" She nodded, like the answer was obvious. "He shows me your picture every night. He says you're the bravest person he knows." My throat tightened. 8 years. I had spent 8 years believing I had been erased, that I existed nowhere in my family's memory, but somewhere, in a little girl's room, I was still there. I had always been there. People always ask me the same question after hearing this story. "Did you forgive your mother?" Here's the truth. Not yet. Maybe never. And that's okay. Forgiveness isn't something you owe someone, it's something you choose. If and when you're ready, and I'm not there. I haven't spoken to her since that night. She hasn't called. She hasn't written. She hasn't shown up. The silence used to feel like a wound. Now, it feels like a boundary, one I built, and one I'm not tearing down without a reason. With Vanessa, things are different. I'm open, but only if she's honest. Not just sorry. Changed. There's a difference. Whether she reaches that point or not, I can live with either outcome, with my father. We're rebuilding, slowly. A phone call each week, a visit here and there. Sometimes we talk, sometimes we sit in silence, but it's real. Not perfect, not repaired, but real. And real is something I didn't have for a very long time. I learned something that night in the church, something I carry with me now. Blood doesn't decide who gets access to your life. You do. You decide who earns a place at your table. And for the first time, I set that table for myself first. This Christmas was different. For the first time in 8 years. I didn't sign up for the overnight shift. I stayed home. My apartment was still small, still imperfect. The same creaky floors, the same cold windows. But the table had more chairs. My father sat on the couch. He's thinner now. Slower, but alive. And healing. Lily stood on a chair, carefully hanging a paper snowflake on my tree. My tree, which this year was taller, fuller, messier, and somehow, better. Margaret moved around the kitchen, cooking like she always does. The smell of garlic and something sweet filled the room. Ethan dropped Lily off that morning. He didn't stay long, just handed me her bag and said, "Thank you." And I said, Thank you for bringing her. Vanessa sent a card. 2 words. I'm sorry. I don't know what it means yet. I don't know if it's a beginning, or just an attempt to ease her own conscience, but I kept it. That's where I am. Open, but careful. Lily sat on the floor, drawing again. She draws constantly now. Every picture is the same. 2 people holding hands. Last Christmas. She knocked on my door holding an album. This Christmas. She was already inside. Some stories don't end neatly. There's no perfect resolution, no clean forgiveness, no moment where everything is fixed. But they can begin again. And sometimes, that's enough. I learned that walking away isn't weakness. It's sometimes the only way to save yourself. I chose to leave a place where I was unseen, set boundaries with my mother, and slowly rebuild relationships only where honesty exists. I stopped chasing love that never reached back and started creating a life where I truly belong. If you would make the same choice, protect your peace and only let the right people in, write yes. If not, write no. And if this story touched you, your subscribe, like, comment, and share could help someone else feel seen. You're part of that impact.